Hello and welcome friends to yet another chapter of Maharashtra State Board Standard 12, The Cop and the Anthem by O. Henry. The name of the author is William Sidney Potter actually. His nickname is O. Henry. Before that, do subscribe to Expressophilia. The name of the character in this story is Soapy. The setup is in New York. The genre is fiction and it is based on realism, that is, real modern life. Let's have a look into the summary of the chapter. The Cop and the Anthem is a story of a homeless person, Soapy, who wants to get arrested so that he could go to the prison and is worried as winter is approaching. He thinks that he would be safe and cozy if somehow he ends up at the prison. To get into the prison, Soapy does various misdemeanors acts. Does he succeed in them? Let's find out. Before finding it out, let's find out the background of the story. On the bench of Madison Square, Soapy has been trying to get himself in a prison. So Soapy begins to feel the chilling effects of winter and decides he must leave this bench. His hibernatorial ambitions are modest in contrast to those of wealthier New Yorkers who escape the winter via the Mediterranean cruises. Soapy only wants 3 months of guaranteed room and board on the island, that is Blackwell Island, where he has spent the past 3 winters just as the other New Yorkers head to the Riviera or the Palm Spring. The newspapers under his coat no longer keep Soapy warm, but he resents the enforced humility of many of the Citizens Charitable Institute. He'd rather be a guest of law, which does not meddle unduly with a gentleman's private affairs. Soapy thus resolves to get himself arrested in order to obtain lodging at Blackwell's Island, which is a prison, for his winter season. His first attempt starts now, and let's look into the detailed explanation of the chapter. Soapy left his bench and strolled out of the square and across the level sea of Asphalt, where Broadway and Fifth Avenue flow together. Up Broadway he turned and stopped at a luxurious cafe. Soapy is the main character of this story. He is shown to walk leisurely or casually out of the square, which is a name of a place in New York, and he heads towards Broadway. Again, Broadway is the name of a place in New York, where he stops near a luxurious cafe. Soapy had confidence in himself from the lowest button of his vest upward. He was shaven, and his coat was trim, and his neat black bow had been presented to him by a lady missionary on Thanksgiving Day. If only he could reach a table in the restaurant unsuspected, success would be his. Soapy has immense confidence within himself. He is clean shaven, wearing a trim coat, black bow on his neck, which was gifted on Thanksgiving Day by a lady missionary. A person who believes in religion and promotes Christianity is called as a missionary. Soapy thinks he would be successful in his mission only if he could reach the cafe table without being stopped or suspected. The portion of him that would show about the table would raise no doubt in the waiter's mind. A roasted mallard duck, thought Soapy, would be about the thing, with a bottle of wine and then some cheese, a cup of coffee and a cigar. $1 for the cigar would be enough. Here, the upper portion of the body that would show up to the waiter and the other people was not to be worried about by Soapy. A toasted mallard duck is what would be good for the order, accompanied with a bottle of wine and some cheese and a cup of coffee and a cigar. And Soapy thinks that $1 for a cigar would be sufficient enough because he didn't intend to pay for the order. The total would not be so high as to call forth any extreme of revenge from the cafe management, and yet the meat would leave him filled and happy for the journey of his winter island. Soapy now thinks that the amount of the bill would not be a cause of a worry for the management, and management will not take any drastic steps like hitting him or something, but rather he would have a delicious meal and would be handed over to the policeman, and eventually on his way back to the prison he would be stomach full with the delicious meal. But as Soapy set foot inside the restaurant doors, the head waitress' eye fell upon his tattered trouser and his satin shoes. strong and ready hands turned him about and conveyed him in silence and haste to the sidewalk and averted the ignoble fate and menaced Millard. As Soapy entered the restaurant, the head waiter saw him and he noticed Soapy's toned out trouser and totally decayed and worn out shoes. The waiter's strong hands were ready to show Soapy the side door to move outside to avoid people viewing the scene, which would be a cause of embarrassment for the restaurant and Soapy and the waiter. This posed a threat to Soapy's menu, which he had planned to order, that is, the roasted duck, the Millard, as he was thrown out. Soapy turned off Broadway. It seemed that his route to the coveted island was not to be an easy one. Some other way of entering the limbo must be devised. Soapy now turned to Broadway, as earlier he was on Fifth Avenue. He now wishes to think of a new plan to enter the prison, as landing himself in a prison does not seem to be an easy idea anymore. At a corner of 6th Avenue, electric lights and cunningly displayed wares behind plate glass made a shop look attractive. Soapy took a stone and dashed it through the glass. People came out running around the corner. A policeman in the lead, Soapy stood still with his hands in his pockets and smiled at the sight of a brass button. On the 6th Avenue, Soapy spotted an attractive looking shop which had flashy lights on the display items which were kept on sale. Soapy picked up a stone and threw it on the display glass of the shop. As this happened, all the people nearby came running to have a look. However, Soapy stood there with his hands in the pocket and smiled as the policeman arrived. Brass button here refers to the policeman. "Where's the man that done that?" inquired the officer agitatedly. "Don't you think I might have to do something with it?" said Sophie with a friendly voice as one greets good fortune. The policeman refused to accept Sophie even as a clue. Men who smash windows do not remain to chat with the police. They take to their heels. The policeman saw a man halfway down the block running to catch a car. With drawn club, he joined in the pursuit. Sophie, with disgust in his heart, drifted along, twice unsuccessful. "Where's the man who threw the stone?" asked the police officer in an angry and a troubled tone. Soapy said, "Don't you think I could be the one?" with a friendly tone, and as he wanted the policeman to think likewise, to take him to his fortune, that is the prison. But on the contrary, the policeman even refused to consider Soapy as an evidence and replied, "Men who threw stones don't wait to chat with the policeman. Rather, they begin to run away. Run away, which is take to their heels." Meanwhile, the policeman spotted a person at a distance running to take a car. The policeman withdrew himself from Soapy's conversation and got engaged in the act of catching the culprit. Soapy felt sick and tired in his heart, aimless as he was unsuccessful 2 times. On the opposite side of the street was a restaurant of no great pretensions. It catered to large appetites and modest purses. Its crockery and atmosphere were thick, its soup and napery thin. Into this place Sophie betook himself without challenge. At a table he sat and consumed beefsteaks, flapjacks, donuts and pie. And then he told the waiter the fact that the minutest coin and himself were total strangers. Now on the opposite side of the 6th Avenue, Soapy came across a restaurant which provided budgeted meals. It provided plenty on minimum prices. So Soapy ordered beefsteak, flapjacks and donut and pie. He ate it all, and when the waiter arrived with the bill, Soapy informed the waiter that he did not have a single penny in his pocket, which refers to the minute coin, and himself were strangers as a phrase in the passage. "Now get busy and call a cop," said Sophie, "and don't keep a gentleman waiting." "No cop for you," said the waiter, with a voice like buttercakes and an eye like the cherry in the Manhattan cocktail. "Hey, con!" Neatly upon his left ear, on the callous pavement, 2 waiters pitched Sophie. He arose joint by joint as a carpenter rules open and dusted his clothes. Arrest seemed now but an elusive dream. The island seemed very far away. A policeman who stood before a drugstore 2 doors away laughed and walked down the street. As Soapy was eager to go to the prison, he asked the waiter to go and call the police and to make it quick and not keep him waiting. But the waiter said, "Cops will not be called for you," with a very pleasing, ultra polite tone, calling him a fraudulent person by saying, "Hey, con." Very hardly and nicely, these two waiters threw Soapy on the footpath, that is the pavement. He stood up, similar to a carpenter who opens the ruler, and every time that he stretches, a creaking sound comes out of it. And similarly, Soapy pulled himself up and dusted himself. Being arrested now was a distant dream to achieve. The island was very far beyond his reach. That's how Soapy felt. A policeman standing next to the chemist shop was seeing this incident and laughed while he walked down the lane. Soapy was seized with a sudden fear that some dreadful enchantment had rendered him immune to arrest. He was in a state of panic, and when he came upon another policeman lounging grandly in front of a glittering theatre, he caught up at the immediate straw of the disorderly conduct. Soapy was caught up by a fear that someone has casted a spell on his dream, and this spell has given it an extra power which is helping him not to get arrested. He was in a state of panic, and there came a policeman who was wasting his time in a very grandful manner in front of the sparkling theatre, as the theatres are always filled with lights and sparked up. On the sidewalk, that is on the footpath, Soapy began to shout like a drunkard, unintelligible talking on top of his unpleasant voice. Soapy danced, cried loudly, made noises, and otherwise disturbed the entire city to the greatest extent. But the policeman only turned his back to the Soapy's facade and just remarked, "Oh, these citizens, as in these people. This one of them, ye lad, celebrating the goose eggs they give to the Hartford College. Noisy, but no harm. We have instructions to let them be." Disconsolate, Soapy stopped his unavailing racket. Would never a policeman lay hands on him? In this fancy, the island seemed an unattainable Arcadian. He buttoned his thin coat against the chilling wind. In a cigar store, he saw a well-dressed man lighting a cigar at the swinging light. He had set his silk umbrella by the door on entering. Soapy stepped inside, grabbed the umbrella, and sauntered off with it slowly. The man at the cigar light followed hastily. "My umbrella," he said sternly. The policeman started saying that these are Yale students who are celebrating their defeat, which is given to them by the Hartford College. It's noisy, but they ain't harmful. This is what the policeman instructed and left Soapy. Soapy turned very sad and dejected. Soapy stopped his illegal practice, which was giving no results. He thought no policeman will catch him or arrest him. In his dream, the prison seemed to be an impossible or a Herculean task to achieve. In these thoughts, he buttoned his thin coat as the winter got more chilling. In a cigar shop, he saw a well-dressed man who was lighting a cigar in a very lively manner. He had kept his silk umbrella by the entry of the door in the shop. Soapy entered inside the shop quickly and took away the umbrella and walked in a calmful manner. The man who had kept his umbrella there followed Soapy hurriedly. "It's my umbrella," said the man in a strict tone. "Oh, is it?" sterned Soapy, adding insult to petty larceny. "Well, why don't you call a policeman?" "I took it, your umbrella. Why don't you call a cop? There stands one on the corner." "Oh, is it?" Soapy smiled in a tauntful manner, which added to the insult of the theft of the personal property. So Soapy stated, "Why don't you go and call the police, as I have taken your umbrella? So please go and call the police." There's one policeman standing in the corner. Now the umbrella owner, who was following Soapy, quickly slowed down, and so did Soapy. With the feeling that something unpleasant is about to happen and luck would again not favor him, the policeman eyed on these two people curiously. "Of course," said the umbrella man. "Well, You know how these mistakes occur if it's your umbrella. I hope you'll excuse me. I picked it up this morning in a restaurant. If you recognize it as yours, why I hope you will. The umbrella man, who was following Soapy, said yes, of course, it will be yours. Well, you know, mistakes like these occur quite often, as I had picked it up from a restaurant this morning. But as it is your umbrella, you must have recognized it. I'm sure it's yours. Of course it's mine, said Soapy savagely. The ex-umbrella man retreated. The policeman hurried to assist a tall blonde in an opera cloak across the street in front of a streetcar that was approaching 2 blocks away. Soapy walked eastward through a street damaged by improvements. He hurled the umbrella angrily into an excavation. He muttered against the men who wear helmets and carry clubs because he wanted to fall into their clutches. They seemed to regret him as a king who could do no wrong. Of course the umbrella is mine, said Soapy in a brutal manner. The umbrella owner, who had been following Soapy, stepped down from his claim of owning the umbrella. The policeman hurried to assist or help the tall person with pale yellow hair in an opera cloak on the opposite side of the street, which was in front of a streetcar. Streetcar is a vehicle that runs on rail powered by electricity that was approaching 2 blocks away. Soapy started walking eastwards, thinking to grab a chance for a better opportunity. He angrily threw the umbrella, which was hard enough to make a hole on the ground. He, in his low voice, spoke against the men who wear helmets and carry clubs, that is, the policemen, as he was wanting them to arrest him. But, on the contrary, they were treating him like a king who could do nothing wrong. At length, Soapy reached one of the avenues to the east where the glitters and turmoil was but faint. He dragged himself towards Madison Square. For the homing instinct survives even when the home is a park bench. But on an unusual quiet corner, Soapy came to a standstill. Here was an old church, quaint and rambling and gabled. Through one violet-stained window, a soft light glowed, where no doubt the organist loitered over the keys, making sure of his mastery of the coming Sabbath anthem. At length, Soapy now reaches the same place, the Madison Square. He is onto a standstill, and he is also facing a lot of disturbance within himself because his plan to reach the jail has failed. Here, there is an old church which is very attractive, old fashioned, wherein air is winding from all sides and all directions as per the construction of the church, which is triangular from the rooftop. The window glass, which was stained violet in color, has a soft light passing through it, and through this there is a sweet music which comes out of the church, which is played as if it is played by the master on the keyboard, and it is played on a particular day which is observed as a day of absenteeism by Jewish and Christians on a religious eve. And this soft music, which is felt by Soapy's ears, fixes him like a twisted iron fence. The moon was above, full and radiant. Vehicles and pedestrians were few. Sparrows twittered sleepily in the eaves of a little while the scene might have been a country churchyard. And the anthem that the organist played cemented Soapy to the iron fence, for he had known it well in the days when his life contained such things as mother and roses and ambitions and friends and immaculate thoughts and collars. This paragraph uses a lot of symbolism to describe the change in Soapy's character, wherein the moon is full and radiant, vehicles are less, and so the people walking by. The birds are chirping softly. It's a country churchyard. All these are transformational symbols that help Soapy remember his past, his childhood, wherein everything was holy. He had his mother, friends, clean thoughts, and clean clothes. His life was not as messed up as it is now. The conjunction of Soapy's perceptive state of mind and the influences about the old church brought a sudden and wonderful change in his soul. He viewed with rising horror the pit into which he had tumbled. The degraded days, unworthy desires, dead hopes, wrecked facilities, and base motives that made up his existence. The link of Soapy's impulsive state of mind and the influences the old church and his old childhood memories brought had changed his soul and showed him the horror and a deep hole that he had fallen down into, and lowered his value during these days, which is non desirable, dead hopes, which destroyed him completely, which made him lose his life's objectives or aims completely, and he had lost his entire existence. And also, in a moment, his heart responded thrillingly to this strange mood. A strong impulse moved him to the battle with his desperate fate. He would pull himself out of the mire and would make a man of himself again. He would conquer the evil that had enslaved him. There was time, he was young yet. He would resurrect his old eager ambitions and pursue them without faltering. In his heart, Soapy responded in an excited manner, which was a strange mood for Soapy. The strong inner impulse moved him, as in a battle of inner soul wherein one needs to choose the good or the bad. He would want to move himself out of a complicated situation in life and make himself to do something good. He wished to win over the inner evil that he was possessed with. He wished to restore his earlier evil aim of landing himself into a prison and follow the new one of transformed Soapy without any hesitation. Those solemn but sweet organ notes had set up a revolution in him. Tomorrow he would go into the roaring downtown district and find work. A fur importer once offered him a place as driver. He would be somebody in the world. He would. Those dignified music notes changed something in Soapy and created a revolution within him. Tomorrow, what he looked in for would find the fur importer who had offered him the driver's job. He would fetch him and he would take up the position of a driver offered to him by the fur importer. Soapy felt a hand laid on arm. He looked quickly around into the impassive face of a policeman. "What are you doing here?" asked the officer. "Nothing," said Soapy. "Then come along," said the policeman. 3 months on the island, said the magistrate in the police court the next morning. In between all these thoughts, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Soapy quickly looked around and saw the unexpressive face of the policeman, who inquired Soapy what he was doing there. To which Soapy replied, "Nothing." And the next thing that Soapy realizes, he was in front of the magistrate the next morning, being granted 3 months of imprisonment at Blackwell Island. So that's about it with the chapter. The irony of the story is, when Soapy was all prepared to land himself into a prison, nobody was ready to take him. And when he transformed himself, the first thing that he found himself was in the jail. Thank you, friends. Thank you, friends, for watching in. Stay tuned for more educational videos on Expressophilia. You may also stay tuned on Expressophilia Unplugged. Please post in your comments in case of any feedbacks. Have a nice day. Stay blessed.